Hey, 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 welcome back to Alive a Day for the month of May. And you know what today is? May 31st. It is the last day of May. It's also Memorial Day. So I wanted to share with you uh, a couple of stories from my dad's military days. And it's kind of interesting. I know that there's going to come a time in the future when these videos that people are uploading on YouTube are eventually going to become a leaf in Ancestry.com. I can't imagine why they wouldn't. I know that when I'm gone, which I'm sure is going to happen eventually, I know that Josh will take comfort in going, how the hell did mom used to cook that? And then he'd go, oh yeah, I helped her make that video. And he can go to YouTube and he can go, oh yeah, that's how mom did it. That was the secret ingredient. She put love in everything, you know. So, so tonight, I I had kind of a rough week. One of my favorite soldiers passed away due to complications from COVID. And it was funny because, I put a little story on his page, and it's weird. It's weird when you know somebody has passed away and their Facebook is still trying to contact you. And I don't know if it's kind of one of those celestial time space thingies where they're actually reaching out to you from the grave and beyond, or if it's just the robot in Amazon, or the robot in Facebook land, or the nanobots trying to reach out to you. I don't know. But so my friend was named Bill Scannell, and he was one of my truck drivers, one of my favorite truck drivers. And he was a Desert Storm vet. He was an imposing figure. He was a very tall guy, and 6 foot something easily, and he had long, crazy long gray hair, and but he had the nicest, greatest personality. He was really a wonderful guy, and he passed away recently, and right before Memorial Day. It's just kind of interesting, that he keeps on popping up on my feed, and I'm kind of like, but you're dead. But okay, I still remember you. And I posted on his Facebook page my favorite memory of him. And what it was we had a customer, Ione State Prison, which is Sacramento way in California, and they would get loads of beef. And I sent Bill in there, and I said, Bill, I'm just letting you know it's a prison, so just be prepared. They might want you to like dress differently. You can't be in jeans, because that's what the prisoners wear, and you're going to get escorted and hang on to your keys the whole time you're in there. I give him this whole, how to successfully get there. So he gets there, and of course he doesn't have something to change into to differentiate him from the prison population. Not like a 6 foot something long haired hippie dude wearing a Desert Storm hat is different, but anyways. So the prison guards tried to put him into this painter's outfit so that he, this painter jumpsuit, so that he didn't stick out. And the man's leg didn't fit in the thing, because he's so tall. And so he was telling me that they ended up like having to use like 2 suits and cutting him apart or something crazy just to get him differentiated enough so that he can make the delivery. And but so he went out and he purchased like this jumpsuit that looked like something that a NASCAR driver would wear, so that the next time I sent him to the prison, he was prepared, which I thought was really cute. But one time, he'd been a smoker for years, which is very common amongst truck drivers, and he didn't have the strongest of lungs. And so he got COVID, and it turned into pneumonia. Unfortunately, it got him. But there was this one time he'd gotten really sick, like super sick, and he slept for like 3 days, and then he woke up And he was fine, right as rain, or maybe 24 hours, something like that. But he was like really, really sick. And then boom, next day, he's totally fine. And so I told him, I said, it's because, you were a soldier in Desert Storm. Because remember all those vaccinations that they gave you that you had no idea what those vaccinations were? I bet you they gave you nanobots. And those nanobots went in there and they fixed whatever was causing you to be sick. Which is basically what your human, a healthy immune system does anyways, But I always had this running joke with him that every time he got sick, he usually got well, within 24 hours. He had a pretty good constitution, despite the fact that his lungs weren't that great. And so I always joked with him, and I said, yep, it's those Desert Storm nanobots, But this time, I guess the nanobots didn't kick in, and it's too bad, because the world lost a really, really wonderful person. But, anyway, since it's Memorial Day, I wanted to share with you my favorite war story from my dad. Now, my dad was always kind of a big fish guy. He'd always tell, big fish stories. Here's him with some of his fishing buddies with, it says on the back, angler, red pounds. That's, that one's my dad. So he said that he joined the army during World War II. The European front had pretty well wound down, and the fight in the Pacific was still pretty heavy duty. And when he joined the army in Wyoming in the mid-40s, they put him into the cavalry, because at that point the cavalry still existed. And there's this panoramic picture of him, and where it's at I really don't know, but there's this panoramic picture of him, and he's all, I knew how to pick out the best horse. And all the other guys were just on regular, bay horses, and there's my dad, on this beautiful bay that had a really pretty white star on front of his muzzle. And so my dad's all, yeah, I know how to pick out the good horse. And so the cavalry became the tank corps. And so my dad went from being part of the cavalry to the Army Tank Corps. And then from the Army Tank Corps, he somehow ended up in the Army Air Corps. And I remember one time we went to the Chino Air Museum, and they had one of those bombers from World War II. And to get from the front of the plane to the back of the plane, you literally had to walk the plank. I mean, we're talking a 2x4. Kind of put those two planes together, the front of the plane and the back of the plane together. And my dad, he goes, I remember when I was a young man that I used to be able to run across this no problem. And he had a hell of a time getting across from the end of the plane to the front of the plane. We're like, okay, Dad, okay. So my favorite story, so anyway, so he ends up in the Army Air Corps, and then he ends up in Asia for the Japan conflict. Starts out in the Philippines, and okay, get you this, okay? I don't know how long he was in the Philippines, okay? But he was long enough to learn how to hit on chicks while he was in the Philippines. So here he is, a 70-something-year-old guy. He's had a couple of strokes. He's had a heart attack. He's got Parkinson's. Has a little dementia going on. He was a chronic smoker, had some emphysema going on, and he's in the hospital. I always love those questions. And how did your father die? I'm like, oh, he fell apart. So he's in the hospital, right? And he's flirting with the Filipino chicks, the nurses, and he's all flirting with them. And the nurses are all like, you're done. You're done. And I'm just like, I'm really, really sorry, and he still remembered how to pick up chicks when he was in his 70s in the hospital, picking on the Filipino nurses. It just used to make me laugh so hard. So after he gets done with the Philippines, he ends up in Japan, okay? And it's the occupation of Japan. The bombs have been dropped. They're in the process of transitioning the government and all that other stuff that happened at the end of World War II in Japan. And so him and his friends, now my dad has always been very, very entrepreneurial, and he also was a real big fan of taking advantages of situations. And since he grew up on a farm, man knew how to fix everything, knew how to build everything, and took care of business, right? So he gets to Japan, and all of the factories are bombed out. So him and his friend starts going through. Now, whether or not this story is true, I don't know, but I think it's a totally cool story. And if it's true, great. If it's not, it should be. So he tells this story about how it's Japan, and the first thing is they round up all of the weaponries, and that's including the samurai swords and the swords, and they pile them out in the ocean, um, and tanks or anything that has to do with war. They're just piling it out in the ocean, and his commander tells him that you can pick out any sword you want. So he grabs his cavalry sword. He could have grabbed a katana, but he didn't know what a katana was at that time. A lot of the guys didn't. And so he grabbed a cavalry sword, and we have that sword, and my nephew has that sword now. Now, interestingly enough, I've learned that old soldiers tell their daughters one story, and they tell their sons something else. Now, supposedly, he's told my brothers and also my husband that he got the sword off of a military man that he dispatched during conflict. But whether he picked it up out of a pile or if he got it off of a dead guy, don't know what the truth is. But anyway, so back to the story I like. So anyway, it's Japan. Him and his friends start going through all of the burned out factories, and they start collecting copper, and they start selling copper, I guess I'm assuming on the black market, and start refurbishing motors and stuff, and they start selling things, and so they start accumulating a little bit of wealth in between their duties of soldiering and being occupation forces in Japan. So my dad decides that he's going to open a bar, which I don't think is too far-fetched knowing my father, but he says he's going to open a bar. So he says he finds this little place, and he wants the local geisha house to provide some entertainment on Friday night or something like that. So he goes and he talks to the madam, and he or to the geisha mother, whatever they call him. I should know the name. I used to know the name, but I don't anymore. But he goes to her and he asks her if it's possible for him to get a couple of girls to entertain, and she's all, you Americans are pigs. I don't want any of my girls near you. But I got this farm girl. She's too old to train. She's too big to train. I guess, because she was a farm girl, she was hefty, or she was solid or something. And so she trades my dad or something. Somehow, some kind of something passes, and my dad now has this girl as a helper for his bar. So I'm assuming she's a teen, maybe an early mid-teens or something like that. If she's too old to train, then she was probably maybe 12, 15, 16 and under or something like that. So he gets the bar set up, and he has this girl, and this girl ends up being his primary hostess, bartender, waitress, and consequently bouncer. Because he said she was a tough little chick, and that she could handle anything. And if any of the GIs got too out of hand, because she was a farmer, she was tough as nails, and she could beat the crap out of them. So I love that. I'm just like, ooh, I like this. And so Dad said, him and his friend ran this little business. They had a great time. And then it was time for them to leave Japan. And so he left the business to her. And whatever happened to her, I don't know, And I always joke about the fact that, I'm curious that if I ever took one of those DNA tests, if I would have, you might have a distant cousin. She's part Japanese. I don't know. I don't know, because, my dad, check this guy out. I mean, he was a good looking guy, So, who knows? But anyway, so I love that story. And whether or not it's true, I don't know. But, like I said, my dad was a big fish guy. So, part of it might be true. Maybe all of it's true. I don't know. But so on this Memorial Day, I thought I'd share with you my favorite dad World War II story. Now, consequently, for those of you who looked at my Facebook today, you saw a picture of my dad, and he's standing in front of the Imperial Gardens in Japan. And interestingly enough, my brother Sterling was stationed in the same area of Japan when he was in the service, which was in the 80s, and he took a picture of him standing in the same spot. The only difference is my brother Sterling isn't in uniform, he's just wearing some jacket and just looks like an American tourist. But we just think it's a trip that they were just literally maybe, a foot apart, 50 years apart. It was just very, very trippy. But when my brother Sterling was stationed in Japan, we would send him letters on a regular basis. And the other day I had done a video where I was showing a bunch of pictures, and there was a picture of my parents with a fake Sterling, and Sterling was stationed in Japan, and it was his birthday, and we had a fake party for him, and we had this little fake, we had this, we pretended that this paper Sterling was Sterling. And so supposedly there was other pictures. What happened to them, I don't know, but Paper Sterling was playing the piano, Paper Sterling was blowing out his candles, Paper Sterling was opening his presents, and I, of course, had the one with Mom and Dad with Paper Sterling. So anyways, I just thought that was funny. But so two things that stick out in my mind about my brother Sterling's time in the military was the pilots have to get fly time, and so they would get fly time, and they would kind of like just tie a guy up with some bungee or something like that, and just kind of like hover and let the guy just kind of dangle out of the plane. So Sterling sent us a little note and drew a little helicopter, and out of the helicopter he drew like a little thing like a spider, and then drew like a little sticker figure with a little note that said me. So, but he was a corpsman, and so one night he said that him and his guys saw this bunny that was hanging out on the side of the road, and the bunny wasn't moving. And so the guys got the rabbit, and they took him inside, and they took an x-ray of the rabbit, and they saw that the rabbit didn't have any injuries. More than likely it was just in shock. It might have been hit or picked up by an animal and dropped or something, but for some reason the bunny wasn't a super happy bunny. So and they took the x-ray and they filed it under B Bunny or something within his filing cabinet of the x-rays that they took at that particular that particular base that he was stationed at. And I thought that was great, so I actually made him a little comic book about how the bunny that they saved was actually the Easter Bunny's cousin. And so the bunny actually put in really, really good words for Sterling and his friends for being kind to him, so that, from henceforth, their Easters would always be extremely blessed because they showed kindness to the Easter Bunny's cousin. So, or something like that. I wrote some weird little story. But, so anyway, so those are my stories. And, I truly believe that there, like I said, sometime in the future, these stories are going to be linked on Ancestry.com. And, after my Uncle Raymond passed away, he was also a veteran. I was looking on YouTube, and I came across him, and he was speaking to a veterans group, and he was talking about his time, and he was talking about making coffins and packing up dead soldiers, and he was crying, and it was very poignant because a lot of us don't know, a lot of us on the civilian side really have no clue what our friends have gone through as part of their military career. And you just get little tiny snippets every once in a while of how bad it truly was. And a friend of mine, I remember we were talking one time, and he'd always been very glib about his time in Vietnam, and then his son joined the Army, and he was talking about I was kind of hoping that my son would never have to deal with picking up his friends and putting them in body bags. But I guess I was wrong. So, you know, when you get those little tiny snippets, then you really can truly appreciate what goes into Memorial Day. So, there you go. Don't you forget, I love you. And all of our soldiers love you. Because we all know freedom's not free. So, don't be a dick about it. Appreciate it. Because, trust me, if you ever go to a third world country, within days, you're gonna realize how good you've got it here. So, anyways, so that's my talk. And, you know, whether or not I'm going to continue for June, I don't know. I still haven't done all of the recipes in my mom's cookbook, and I think that definitely needs to be shared. And I have a new vintage cookbook for you. This one is the New England Yankee Cookbook, and I need to share that with you. And I have a couple of others from the 60s. This particular one is from, I believe, the 40s or 50s. But anyways, you know, so that's my talk for today. Love your veterans. Love them. Love them big time. And if they're no longer with us, remember them in your hearts. All right. Love you. Night, night. Bye.